Well, hello there.
Hello.
So,
You're
let me
low. We're
okay,
having a little glitch, guys.
okay.
Yeah.
Let me try again. So,
All right. He's going to try again. We're having a little gremlin like we always do, but of course, Thomas will be back in just a second with profiled episode for tonight. He's flipping his stuff around now. And we just played the Connecticut Paracon commercial, which is coming up very soon. It's July. If you guys didn't see it, there he comes back.
okay. How about now? We
Yeah,
good?
yeah. We always have a gremlin, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Just got to stop feeding those things after midnight. We'll be okay.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
David.
But no, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to another episode. It's going to be a good one tonight about serial conspiracies. We're going to go through the whole gamut. But of course, first off, not only do I talk about serial killers and all that, this is part of the paranormal community, and we have a lot of events coming up. Just quickly, again, you saw the snippet. Connecticut Paracon's coming up July 11th. Again, www.paracon with two N's, just like you see down there, .org. Check it out. Tickets. There's also going to be a concert after the Paracon later in the evening, being put on by the OG himself, the first Jason Voorhees ever, in Friday the 13th, with his band First Jason at Volo Restaurant and Lounge. So that's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great day and night. Make sure you guys make it. Tickets are on there. Hotel stay. The whole event is at the Clarion Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So if you come a day early, you can roll out of bed and be at the event. No problems. Just after that, the next month after, we're running for the third straight year, the Connecticut Witch and Culture Festival in Hartford, Connecticut. This year, we got lucky. They're letting us have it at the old State House in Hartford. So back in the day when those witch trials happened back in the 1600s, 45 years before Salem, that field where the old State House stands was where the gallows were, where most of those people that were accused of witchcraft were hung.
Wow.
So that's right there. So there's a lot of energy. There'll be a lot of speakers, vendors, everything you could think of. This is an event. It's close to me because of the history of it, and just a more open-minded thing, and just to give reverence to the people and what they went through. So to be recognized for that. It is a controversial subject that we deal with every year, but we always try and use it with kid gloves and make sure that we, give an open mind for everybody and listen to what everybody has to say.
Right.
So, of course, after that, our next big event is in November, the Salem Paranormal and Horror Festival. It'll be at Salem State University on the South Campus. We're still booking some talent for that. So anybody watching that wants to participate, make sure you instant message me, of course, after the show. And we'll try and get you in and see how the feng shui occurs with the right guests to make sure all our patrons are happy. But those are the big things coming up. Littered in, Station I as Wardruna will be at a ton of places this year all over the country, talking about our healing collective. So it's just something new to the paranormal that I think it's going to blow people's minds. A lot of the places we've already been talking about this have been sold out crowds. So we're looking forward to bringing that awesome message to everybody. And a lot of the members of Wardruna will be at these events with us to come up and speak with us. So it's going to be a group effort, just like it always is. Wardruna is a we and not an I. And we're bringing that to everybody to know that the paranormal community, we bring you together and to heal traumas and all that and what we see from the darkness, bring it into the light. So we're excited about that. So that's a big thing coming up. But what do you got going on, Gwenny?
I will be in Wisconsin at the Bearded Brothers Brawl.
Nice.
You have to say that 3 times, right?
Yeah.
In Broadhead, Wisconsin. That is going to be on the 5th and 6th. The next weekend, I actually have a little fun thing for myself. I'll be in Wilmington, North Carolina, doing a little investigation at a place with a friend. I'm going to probably be going live. After that, we've got from New Orleans to Gettysburg to Alabama to you in Connecticut and all over. So it's going to be a busy summer.
It's great, and I can't wait to see you guys. I don't know where I'll see you first, but I know we'll be down in New Orleans too, so that's going to be fun. Stacia and I and a few other people, Father Bob,
Yep.
John Zaffis, Bill Slevin will all be speaking together
Yes.
on some good topics of the paranormal. So that's going to be fun. But other than that, Gwenny, you know what time it is? It's let's zoom in and uncover the criminal mind. All right, peeps. All the glorious weirdos out there, we're ready to go here again for Profiled. We're going to talk about serial conspiracies today. So I know we're going to get a little more fun, less of me being the lecturer and the teacher the last few months. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Again, if you got any questions, put them in all caps so that way Gwen, we could go over those at the end of the show. And anybody chiming in, again, I appreciate you guys chiming in. I know you're watching. I will, of course, acknowledge you after the show. And again, I appreciate that. But let's take a look at this. When we're looking at official court records, the intersection of true crime and urban legend reveals a fascinating subculture of lore. While true crime profiling generally focuses on behavioral patterns, signatures, and individual pathology, true crime conspiracy theories often look for hidden networks, government involvement, or occult ties to explain what standard investigation leaves open. So we're going from fact to conspiracy. So let's break it down a little bit. These are the most enduring conspiracy theories and deep-rooted lore surrounding some well-known serial cases. First off, one you'll recognize, it's a multi-killer and cult networks that people talk about. The most common narrative variation of serial kill lore is a shift from a lone wolf to an organized network. Proponents of these theories argue that law enforcement prefers a single perpetrator conviction to close cases quickly and avoid public panic about larger active groups. One of the biggest cases that kind of blew open a little bit later after his arrest was the Son of Sam, believed to have been a cult with David Berkowitz. Official record, David Berkowitz acted entirely alone in the 1976 to 77 shooting spree in New York City, motivated by personal delusions where he thought his neighbor's dog was the Son of Sam. The guy that owned the house was Sam, that was his dog. Giving him, the devil's voice coming at him, telling him what to do. But the lore, the investigative journalist Maury Terry, who looked into the case, spearheaded the theory that Berkowitz was merely a shooter for an offshoot of a shadowy occult group known as the Process Church of the Final Judgment. So the nuance to this theory gained significant traction because Berkowitz himself later supported it. He was a little delusional, of course. If something like that comes out, you're going to jump on it because it could actually hopefully get you out of jail. But he claimed that the Carr brothers, John and Michael Carr, the sons of Sam Carr, the neighbor, were the actual shooters in several of the attacks. Both brothers died under mysterious or violent circumstances shortly after Berkowitz's arrest. Forensic anomalies such as radically different composite sketches from different crime scenes and conflicting eyewitness descriptions of the shooter's vehicle and hair remain the core evidence cited by those who believe multiple gunmen were involved. So that's a theory to look into. I know I'm kind of quickly going over it, but a lot of the stuff I talk about, I encourage you guys to jump in a little bit further because some of these stories are really cool. And I just want to try and get through a lot of them. Hopefully it'll pique your interest to jump into some other stuff. The other big lore was the smiley face killers, all right? Not to be mistaken with the happy face killer, Keith Jesperson. That was a cool redone movie about his life and all that. That was a really cool one if you could catch it. I think it's on Netflix or something like that. Check it out, the happy face killer. But the lore behind smiley face killers, which is never proven, the lore popularized by retired New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte. This theory suggests that a coast-to-coast network of organized killers is responsible for the drowning deaths of dozens of young athletic college-age men across several Midwestern and Northeastern states since the late 1990s. The signature, the theory links these geographically dispersed cases via a distinct piece of graffiti a spray-painted smiley face found near the water sites where bodies were recovered. So the skeptical counter-analysis, the FBI, the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and multiple independent criminologists have thoroughly reviewed the data and rejected the theory. They concluded that the tragic deaths are accidental drownings, heavily correlated with alcohol consumption, and the note that a smiley face is one of the most ubiquitous common graffiti symbols in the world, making its presence statistically coincidence rather than coordinated signature. But again, I'm one of those guys, I don't believe in coincidence if it's showing up at Aldi's, but who am I to say? Again, we're talking about conspiracy theories today. But there's also, we'll get into this more into the topic, but let's go to the government programs and institutional protection. So there's another major category, and the domain connects highly intelligent or social mobile killers to institutional cover-ups, intelligence agencies, or illicit psychological programs. So let's talk about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and Whitey Bulger, the Boston mob boss, and MK Ultra. We're going to get more into MK Ultra in a little bit, but let's look at this. The fact, while Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was a domestic terrorist rather than a traditional serial killer, his case features a confirmed link to a dark piece of history. While a young prodigy at Harvard University in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Kaczynski was a research subject in a brutal psychological experiment conducted by Dr. Henry Murray. So the lore is Murray's research into breaking down human personality under extreme verbal abuse and stress was partially funded by the CIA's infamous MK Ultra mind control project. The theory suggests that the intensive psychological manipulation Kaczynski went under directly fractured his mind, inadvertently creating the anti-technology extremist he later became. Crazy. Some people actually think that because of his intelligence around that time, they don't know exactly where he was at certain times traveling around, that he might have been the killer, the Zodiac killer. He might have been the Zodiac killer, they say, but that's been disproven since. But that's the other theory behind so many people being considered the Zodiac killer. Of course, same thing with Jack the Ripper. Never really solved. So there's always throwing out theories and all that. And we'll get into that again also in a little bit. But the other part of it is the Boston mob boss, Whitey Bulger, was actually subjected to MK Ultra chemical testing while he was in prison in Atlanta, Georgia. Conspiracy right there. So there's also another cult club, the Finders Cult, in the Phoenix program. So the lore of this is in 1987, an investigation into a Washington, D.C. group called the Finders uncovered coordinates, telex messages, and training manuals that suggested a sophisticated international child trafficking operation. Is this the beginnings of Epstein and all that? Who knows? I don't know. It's all conspiracy. The part of it that they say is the conspiracy part. The investigation was abruptly taken over by federal authorities, and the files were heavily classified. This led to an intense speculation that the group was a front operation for the CIA used to gather intelligence. Yeah, those Epstein files have been pretty much heavily classified too. They've not been wanting to come out with those. So there's a lot of similarities in this situation. So they recruit deep cover assets or equipment with psychological profiling techniques rooted in early military operations like the Vietnam-era Phoenix program is what they're blaming this on. So there's also, of course, the unidentified elusive phantoms. Those are the conspiracies. Again, like I said, the Zodiac killer, any of those types of things, Jack the Ripper. So we put in the phantoms of this, maybe it's conspiracy. So when a killer is never caught, the vacuum of information is naturally filed by expansive mythology over time. These figures morph from real-world predators into near supernatural phantoms. This actually goes way back too. We'll look at this, but let me just go in a little history. a lot of our monsters and how they were written about, the werewolves and things like that, back in the day, before anybody really knew that somebody killed multiple people, a lot of people blamed it on that lore where they considered maybe the killer was a werewolf or anything like that. So that's where a lot of our monster lore comes from actual serial killers before they called it serial killers. They just think a monster was going around killing people, which of course a serial killer is a monster of evil for them to be able to do that. But back into the Phantoms, the Zodiac Killer and the Cipher Hoax Theory. The standard profile, a single, highly organized offender who terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s and the early 70s. Yeah, that puts the Unabomber around that time too. So that one still gets me, but again, another conspiracy. We could look into that at another time. There's taunting police with complex cryptic ciphers. So the radical counter theory introduced by some researchers is the hoax theory, posed that the Zodiac Killer never actually existed as a single person. Instead, the theory suggests that a series of unrelated homicides were committed by different individuals and a brilliant, opportunistic person, possibly a disgruntled law enforcement insider or a specific suspect with access to police files, wrote the letters and ciphers to tie the crimes together, creating a unified fictional monster that completely baffled traditional profiling efforts. Sounds like a good theory, but again, we put so much into that because, again, it's a phantom. We don't have a suspect, and that's what makes these things come alive as we talk about conspiracies. But behavioral profiling and true crime mythology, let's throw this together from an investigative standpoint. Analyzing these theories reveal a great deal about the human need for narrative structure. Of course, classic behavioral profiling relies on looking at the evidence to establish our modus operandi, MO, victimology, and signature, things we all have to look for when we're looking at serial killer incidents. So conspiracy lore, on the other hand, often emerges when the raw reality of a case feels too chaotic or senseless. Believing in an all-powerful occult network or highly organized government program, while terrifying, inadvertently provides a strange sense of order, implying that these horrific acts are part of a grand, deliberate design, rather than the tragic actions of a single, deeply fractured individual. Yeah, I think a lot in our lore, and to make us feel more comfortable, it's hard to put that much power into a single individual. That's why a lot of people have theories that it's more of a group. We really look at the JFK assassination, where a lot of the theory and lore behind that and the conspiracies go hand in hand. How could somebody take out a president by themselves? So they had to have had help. So that's where a lot of that goes into. You have your beliefs, I have my beliefs, but let's jump into the MK Ultra is always the biggest one. There's so much lore behind that. What happened? Who knows? Does it go into these people's DNA? We're going to talk about that. So the theory that MK Ultra, the CIA's covert mind control program, may have inadvertently or intentionally created a lineage of serial killers, is a prominent fixture in alternative history and conspiratorial criminology, while mainstream forensic psychology focuses on the bi-psychosocial model. These theories suggest a darker institutional origin. So let's analyze the primary arguments and the psychological frameworks used to support these claims. Let's look at it. The big one here, the Manchurian Candidate legacy. The core of this theory suggests that MK Ultra aimed to create programmable individuals using trauma-based mind control. Theorists argue that it is a subject was broken through severe trauma and reprogrammed, but then released or deactivated without proper reversal. The resulting psychological fragmentation could manifest as extreme violence. So the dissociative link, MK Ultra reportedly experimented with drugs like LSD, the sensory deprivation to induce DID. Of course, we talked about that last few episodes. Dissociative identity disorder. Forensic psychologists agree that many serial killers suffer from severe dissociation, The theory simply posits that the government, rather than domestic trauma, are the architect of that dissociation. So we also have the sleeper theory. Some suggest that the children of original test subjects might inherit predispositions to trauma or be raised in environments shaped by the reprogrammed behavior of their parents, creating a cycle of institutionalized violence. Holy smokes. But high-profile case associations that we're going to look at, proponents of this theory often point to specific serial killers who had tangible or direct links to MKUltra affiliated institutions or researchers. Of course, we talked about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Well, not a serial killer, we talked about before. Another one, Charles Manson. A lot of people don't know about that one. Numerous authors have investigated Manson's time in terminal facilities and his ties to free clinics in San Francisco that were allegedly fronts for MKUltra drug testing, suggesting his ability to manipulate family members, mirrored CIA conditioning techniques. Another one, I heard of Sirhan, who was the killer of Robert Kennedy. That was suggested that maybe he had this type of mind control too. There's a pedigree argument. Some research claim that certain families were selected for multi-generational testing, suggesting that the serial killer trait was an accidental byproduct of trying to create the perfect deep cover operative. That's craziness right there. So our forensic counter argument for this, while MKUltra experiments were objectively real and horrific, most criminologists view the serial killer connection as more of a symbolic overlap than a literal production line. So we'll look at the factor, their origin of violence, MKUltra theory, institutional conditioning, the forensic psychology. It's just more of the childhood trauma, neurological deficit is merely more of the growth. The objective, they controlled utility assassinations, the MKUltra theory. So forensic psychology looks more at the personal gratification or compulsion of that certain serial killer. So the outcome on MKUltra theory was highly organized, systemic, but forensic psychology often chaotic and impulsive. So there's a lot that goes into that. That's the argument. But there's also, again, like we talked about, that it might be in the DNA, so our epigenetics and our ancestry. A more scientific pivot to the ancestry questions involves epigenetics. Research shows that extreme trauma can leave chemical marks on genes, which are then passed down to offspring. If a parent was subjected to the high-intensity trauma of MKUltra, their children might be born with a hyperactive amygdala or a permanent fight or flight setting. When combined with the volatile upbringing, the biological priming could, in theory, lower the threshold for a person to develop sociopathic or violent tendencies. So let's sum this up. While there is no declassified smoking gun linked the CIA to the intentional creations of serial killers, the overlap between the methods used in MKUltra and the psychological profiles of certain killers remains a subject of intense debate among investigative researchers. Of course, if there wasn't a debate, there wouldn't be conspiracy, and we wouldn't be talking about it tonight, would we? So now, another big one, again, I mentioned Epstein earlier and all that, and how there's these connections with everything, but we're looking at serial killer connections. One of the biggest ones, if you want to look at the underbelly of the 1970s and 80s, Midwest true crime, there's three elements: the Ripper Crew, John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, and Dean Carell, the Candyman, converge into one of the most chilling, interconnected conspiracy theories in modern criminal history. While mainstream history treats them as separate anomalies, alternative investigative theories suggest that they were all tentacles of the same monster, a highly organized, nationwide, elite protected pedophile and human trafficking ring. Sounds familiar, sounds very updated. Here's how the pieces of the dark puzzle fit together. So let's look at the common denominator. We're going to call this, the Delta Project with John David Norman. To understand Gacy and the Candyman connection, you have to look at John David Norman operating out of Chicago. Norman ran the Delta Project, a massive, highly organized, nationwide pedophile trafficking ring disguised as a boys' club. The Gacy link, Norman operated in Gacy's backyard, of course. When police raided Norman's Chicago operations, they found extensive address books and mailing lists. Furthermore, Gacy briefly employed a man named Philip Pesky, who was a direct close associate of John David Norman. Gacy himself frequently hinted that he did not act alone, once famously stating that he was merely the body disposal system for a larger operation. Now, the Candyman link down in Houston, Texas, Dean Carell, the Candyman, was systematically abducting and murdering young boys with the help of teenage accomplices. Norman Network had direct tentacles in Houston. Carell's operation fits the exact profile of a local supplier for a broader national network of wealthy, influential buyers. So Carell was getting help from teenagers. Gacy hired teenagers to help him in his business. So there is that correlation there that I just, with research, came back to my brain to mention to you guys. But the Chicago convergence, Gacy and the Ripper crew, that connection, moving into the late 70s and 80s, the focus shifts entirely to the Chicago area, where the overlap between Gacy's timeline and the rise of the Ripper crew occurs. The Ripper crew, led by Robin Gett, along with Edward Spreitzer and brothers Andrew and Thomas Kokorlis, was a satanic cult serial killer backpack that abducted, mutilated, and murdered as many as 18 women in the Chicago area between 1981 and 1982. The conspiracy connected them to Gacy relies on a stunning direct connection. Robin Gett worked for John Gacy. He was one of those teenagers, older kids at the time that were working for the construction business here. So Gett was a subcontractor for Gacy's PDM contracting business. He literally helped Gacy build things, and theorists suggest may have known exactly what was going on in the crawl space of Gacy's Norwood Park Township home. They feel it was a passing of the torch because Gacy was arrested in December 1978. The Ripper crew began their active murder spree just a couple years later in 1981. Investigative researchers suggest that Gett didn't just learn construction from Gacy. He learned how to hunt, how to manipulate, and how to operate within a structured predatory system. When Gacy went down, Gett allegedly evolved the blueprint into his own occult-driven network. Craziness. But we're going to look at the grand conspiracy of a national syndicate. When you tie the Ripper crew, Gacy, Carell together, this conspiracy shifts away from the lone wolf serial killer myth and points toward a structured syndicate. So you have, on the top, you have John David Norman, the Delta Project Chicago hub. Then you're going to have Dean Carell, the Candyman in Houston, Gacy, the killer clown in Chicago, employed and mentored Robin Gett, the Ripper crew, how it conspires into that serial killer family tree, whatever you want to call it, which is crazy right there. But core arguments of the conspiracy, the procurement network, proponents of the theory argue that Carell and Gacy were not just killing for personal gratification, but were running regional procurement hubs for wealthy, powerful clients. The protective umbrella for years, both Carell and Gacy managed to evade law enforcement despite massive red flags, mounting disappearances, and direct complaints. The conspiracy just suggests that they were protected by high-ranking political or law enforcement figures who were clients of the ring. Remember, Gacy was very involved in politics, so there's some theory behind that, but that could go really close on that conspiracy-wise. So there is that attachment that we have to look into. So again, everything I'm talking about, look into a little further, go down the rabbit hole like we love to do, and see what you could find. But an occult transition, the transition from Gacy to the Ripper crew represents a dark, ritualistic evolution of the same network. The Ripper crew operated out of a makeshift satanic chapel in Geck's attic, suggesting that the underground network holding these killers together had deep esoteric and cult-like roots. So while law enforcement officially closed these cases as separate entities, the overlapping timelines, shared associates, geographic proximity leave a trail of breadcrumbs that true crime profilers and researchers will all still debate today. Oof, that's a big one. So let's go a little deeper into it. You know, this theory always gets me. It's always very interesting because it involves two big name serial killers. So let's look more. The convergence of John Wayne Gacy and Dean Carell in Houston forms one of the more chilling and heavily scrutinized network theories in true crime history. So law enforcement officially closed, of course, both of these. The core of the theory frequently explored in the investigative documentaries like The Clown and the Candyman suggests that Gacy and Carell were not operating in vacuums, but were instead highly active nodes in a nationwide underground network of child exploitation and trafficking, like we talked about. So we're going to dig a little deeper. The core node, Chicago to Houston. So Gacy, operating out of the suburban Norwood Park Township just outside Chicago, Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys between 72 and 78. Gacy utilized his construction company, PDM Contractors, his political connections as a Democrat, precinct captain, and his community status to deflect suspicion. Dean Carell, the Candyman, in Houston, Texas, from 70 to 73. Carell, whose family owned a candy company, abducted, tortured, and murdered at least 28 teenage boys. His operation relied heavily on two teenage accomplices, David Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley, who lured local youth to Carell in exchange for cash payments. So the evidence fueling the network theory, the theory that a pipeline existed between Gacy's Chicago operation and Carell's Houston network, is built on several startling overlaps, shared geographic anomalies, and missing pieces of evidence. We'll look at the Delta Sigma Chi fraternity ring. One of the strongest circumstantial threads involves a multi-state network operating under the guise of an illicit underground ring known as Delta Sigma Chi. Investigators and researchers uncovered evidence that the ring comprised trusted institutions, include youth organizations and community groups, to identify, groom, and traffic vulnerable runaways. The Pied Piper procurement model. Both killers relied on an organized system of scouts or accomplices to harvest victims, while Carell used Henley and Brooks. Gacy's construction payroll was filled with young men who disappeared, and survivors reported that other adults were frequently present in Gacy's home during their captivity. The missing victims and timelines. Gacy traveled frequently, including documented trips to Houston area during the exact years Carell's ring was at its peak. Furthermore, several of Gacy's victims were never identified, and thousands of photographs of unknown young men were recovered from Gacy's home, hinting that his reach extended far past the bodies found in the crawl space. The John Prowler reports in the mid-70s, Chicago's uptown neighborhood, a frequent hunting ground for transient youth, was plagued by reports of well-dressed man named John cruising for young boys. Despite numerous tips, brief police stops, the system consistently failed to prosecute Gacy for years, sparking persistent rumors of high-level local protection or systemic cover-ups, which goes on a lot, the whole thing, even with now what we're dealing with the Epstein files and all that, high-end political people, law enforcement, supposed movie stars and all these other people with money and what they're up to and what's going on. That it's just sickening what goes on in our country in these theories, but there's such a sickness behind this, and yeah, there's vampires out there, and somebody needs to release the wolves and take care of this because this is sick. So the systemic shield, a major point of interest for behavioral profilers, and how both men evaded law enforcement despite massive local disappearances. Carell benefited from a Houston police department that routinely, I can't talk tonight, dismissed missing boys as mere runaways. Similar, Gacy benefited from dropped charges, settled civil suits, and staggering jurisdictional oversights by Cook County authorities until his ultimate arrest in late 1978. Officially, the FBI maintains that Carell and Gacy were separate, independent entities. However, the uncanny similarity in their methodologies, their concurrent timelines, and the unresolved leads regarding a national buyer's market for trafficked youth keep the Chicago-Houston conspiracy theory very much alive in cold cases and serial killers circles. So, yeah, that one makes me sick. There's so much attached to it. And just when that theories kind of go away on that aspect, there's a whole nother thing. I really think that all this stuff is all together with what we hear about today, what we've heard about then. I just think it's just still going on, and it's sickening. And just love your children, keep them safe, know where they are. That's the huge part of it. So these people are just unbelievable, and how this still goes on today. Let's leave that negative and go on a more theory where I kind of have fun with this one. This is a fun theory and all, but gives us guessing. And I talked about Jack the Ripper earlier. But let's look at some famous people that the conspiracy theories that they're serial killers are attached to. So there's an intersection of pop culture, history, and true crime often burst bizarre urban legends. When a famous figure possesses a certain eccentric mystique, a dark public image, or simply lived in the right place at the wrong time, the internet and sometimes mainstream historians can spin wild conspiracy theories accusing them of being serial killers. From royal cover-ups to modern viral memes, some of the most famous people who have been accused of harboring a dark, hidden double life include, of course, we're going to go a little bit back to the late 1800s. Prince Albert Victor. Was he the royal Jack the Ripper? One of the oldest, most enduring historical conspiracy theories involves Prince Albert Victor, known as Eddie, the grandson of Queen Victoria and second in line to the British throne. The theory, proponents of the royal conspiracy suggest that Prince Albert Victor committed the infamous 1888 Jack the Ripper murders in London's Whitechapel district. Variations of the theory suggest he contracted syphilis, went insane, and committed the murders in a fit of madness, or that the murders were a massive Masonic cover-up orchestrated by the royal physician Sir William Gull to eliminate women who knew about a secret illegitimate child the prince had fathered. So the reality of it is there's no hard evidence connecting the prince to the crimes. Official records show that during several of the murders, Prince Albert Victor wasn't even in London. He was at a Balmoral in Scotland or visiting family elsewhere. So we took that one out. So there's so many theories behind that, and the list goes on with the Jack the Ripper one. But there's another thing, Lewis Carroll, his literary cryptogram. Always talk about going down the rabbit hole. This is where it all starts. So the celebrated author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, he was born Charles Dodson, was also found himself in the crosshairs of ripperologists. The theory in 1996, author Richard Wallace published a book claiming that Lewis Carroll was the true identity of Jack the Ripper. Wallace claimed that Carroll, traumatized by severe upbringing, suffered a psychotic break, and the proof allegedly lay in Carroll's books and letters, where Wallace rearranged sentences into complex anagrams that read as graphic confessions of the Whitechapel murders. The reality, the theory is widely dismissed by criminologists and literary scholars. Critics pointed out that by using Wallace's exact anagram method, you can take almost any text, including children's nursery rhymes, and rearrange the letters to make it sound like a murder confession. Carroll had no known history of violence. That would be a weird one. That's really going down the rabbit hole on that one. But the other one, of course, is the theory. This one's brought up a lot. This is a good theory. I like this one. This is a fun one for me. Again, these are two serial killers that were very infamous, and they think they're both just one and the same. That's the H.H. Holmes being a multi-continent killer So infamous as one of America's first documented serial killers, famous for his Chicago murder castle during the 1893 World's Fair. However, a massive conspiracy theory pushes his body count across the Atlantic. So this is the theory. A popular theory promoted heavily by Holmes' own great-great-grandson, Jeff Mudgett. Jeff is a good guy. I've seen him on a lot of podcasts. I'd love to interview him soon, maybe on this broadcast. We'll see if we could hook up with him to talk about his great-great-grandfather. So he argues that H.H. Holmes traveled to London in 1888 under an alias, and it was actually Jack the Ripper. The theory lies on similarities in their handwriting, the surgical precision used in some of the Ripper mutilations. Holmes was a trained physician. The ship logs allegedly showing Holmes traveling to England at that time. The reality, while highly cinematic, which it would be cool if it was true, but that would be so wild. But of course, there's no proof of it. But the timelines, actually do not match. Most historians point to documentation placing Holmes firmly in Chicago and parts of American Midwest during the autumn of 1888. Furthermore, Holmes verified modus operandi, his MO, killing for insurance fraud, financial gain, and utilizing gas and traps in a controlled environment. Again, even the gas and traps thing and all that, that's how he built the murder castle. But when it was investigated, there was no proof that anybody was actually killed in there for any reason. So that's another conspiracy too, that's what it was built for, but I don't think it was ever used for murder. There's no proof of that. But, it drastically differs from the Blitz-style street attacks that Jack the Ripper did. So that's kind of out the window. So there's been some theory that by mitochondrial DNA, that there was a Polish barber that was actually the Jack the Ripper, but that's still up in the air. Another big one, again, we've been talking about, the old P. Diddy and all that stuff, but Beyonce and Jay-Z, are they pop culture masterminds? In the digital age, TikTok and internet forums frequently birth massive modern urban legends. A highly pervasive conspiracy theory circulated widely online following the federal arrest of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs in late 2024. This is the theory. Internet sleuths concocted a sprawling theory accusing Beyonce and Jay-Z of acting as ruthless shadow operators who allegedly orchestrated the tragic deaths of competing musical icons such as Aaliyah, Left Eye Lopez, and Michael Jackson to clear Beyonce's path to industry dominance. That's the theory. So this theory spiraled to include the idea that other celebrities publicly thank Beyonce during award acceptance speeches like Adele in 2017 out of fear for their own safety. The reality, this is a classic example of internet viral rumor fueled by algorithms and confirmation bias. There is absolutely no factual basis, evidence, or police investigation linking the couple to any such crimes. The deaths of Aaliyah, tragic plane crash, Michael Jackson, acute propofol intoxication are fully documented medical and legal cases with no connection to the music duo. Or are they? The other theory, which of course is very far-fetched, there's a good friend of mine, she loves this theory. She brings it up all the time in her political posts, and I kind of find it funny when she does. But it's the Ted Cruz. That's an internet's favorite meme. Perhaps the most funny part of it, a parody turned conspiracy, involves Texas Senator Ted Cruz. The theory beginning as a random satirical tweet in 2013, the internet became flooded with the joke that Ted Cruz is actually the elusive Zodiac killer who terrorized Northern California in the late 60s. During the 2016 presidential election cycle, the meme exploded into a viral phenomenon featuring side-by-side photo comparisons of Cruz in the infamous 1969 police sketch. While reality is the theory is physically impossible. The Zodiac murders began in 1968 and primarily took place in 1969. Ted Cruz was born in Calgary, Canada in December of 1970. So Cruz himself has leaned into the joke over the years, occasionally posting the Zodiac's infamous cryptograms on his social media accounts around Halloween. Well, if Ted Cruz was the Zodiac killer, he'd have to be a time traveler because he would have been -2 years old when he committed these crimes. So, but it's funny. I know a lot of people that want to hang on to it do say that, yeah, maybe it's a time traveler, so government ability to time travel is another conspiracy theory. So the internet loves a good rabbit hole, of course, and the bizarre true crime subculture has spawned some of these wild theories of our beloved cultural icons and historic figures. When you dig beneath the sensational headlines, these serial killer conspiracies actually reveal a mix of long-running comedy bits, mistaken identities, and some very real macabre history. So here's some really good ones on top of that. So one of my favorites, being a musician myself, being down in Nashville quite a bit, I used to be confused when I'd wear my cowboy hat and sing. Everybody said, "You look like Garth Brooks." I think that took out my music career because I looked too much like him at the time. So it's like, oh, we already done that. But that's okay. Garth Brooks is awesome. And also, people are asking on the internet, Garth, where are the bodies? That's the meme that's been going out. If you open the comment section on any Garth Brooks social media post, you will see thousands of people asking variations of the same chilling question. Where's the bodies, Garth? Despite the intense online speculation, the entire theory is a massive, long-running internet joke created by comedians Tom Segura, Christine P. on their podcast, Your Mom's House, origin around 2018. Garth Brooks posted a bizarre, intensely direct video on Instagram announcing his stadium tour using phrases like, "Let's get physical," playing music with an unsettling, intense stare. Segura poked fun at the clip on his podcast, joking that Brooks possessed the creepy, overly polite demeanor of a hidden serial killer. So the escalation, the podcast fans ran with it. They began spamming Brooks' accounts over the years. The internet sleuths community took the joke seriously, creating crowdsourced heat maps that absurdly attempted to cross-reference his massive tour dates over the decades with localized missing person reports. The reality is it's absolutely not factually based. The rumors, it's a textbook example of comedic bit evolving into a full-blown modern urban legend through sheer internet repetition. Another one of my favorites, good old Bob Ross, mistaken identity and the happy little accident twist. So the rumor that a soft-spoken, Afro-rockin' PBS paint icon Bob Ross was secretly a serial killer stems from a dark twist of internet nomenclature and genuine true crime confusion. Coincidentally nicknamed, the theory often misattributes a sinister meaning to his famous phrase, "We don't make mistakes, just happy accidents," jokingly reframing his painted landscapes as locations of hidden graves. The real killer, the rumor gained traction because there was a notorious high-profile serial killer named Michael Bruce Ross, known as the Roadside Strangler, of course, who was executed in Connecticut in 2005. That's a whole nother story right there, me being born in Connecticut. Having a friend who was actually, when he was growing up, had contact with Ross on his family's egg farm, which is crazy too. We'll have to have a whole episode about that and have my friend Danny on to talk about that. But the reality is lazy online searches, true crime algorithms frequently cross-pollinated the name Ross with serial killer, leading to a viral myth. In reality, Bob Ross was a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force, where he functioned as a master sergeant who swore off yelling after leaving the military, dedicating the rest of his life to spreading peace through art. So let's do our final one of the night here. Benjamin Franklin, our president. There was 1,200 bones in the basement. Unlike the first two, Benjamin Franklin conspiracy theory is rooted in a genuinely horrifying, verifiable discovery. In 1998, conservationists restoring Franklin's former 4-story Georgian home at 36 Craven Street in London excavated the basement and uncovered a pit containing more than 1,200 pieces of human bone belonging to roughly 15 individuals, including several infants. While the headlines immediately screamed that the founding father was a historical mass murderer, forensic analysis quickly revealed a far more logical, though still illegal, scientific explanation. So on his location, 36 Craven Street, London, his residence from 1757 to 1775, the 1,200 bone fragments, 15 distinct bodies, the marks, scientific incisions, trepan skulls, precise cuts from medical saws, the real culprit, William Hewson, a brilliant young anatomist and protege of William Hunter. They had grave robbing trade in the 18th century. Studying human anatomy was highly restricted, and securing legal cadavers was nearly impossible. But to supply his secret anatomy school hosted at his house, Hewson relied on resurrectionists, grave robbers, or smuggled bodies from the nearby gallows and wharves. The basement burial, after completing his dissections and medical lectures, Hewson would just throw human remains in the trash without getting caught and prosecuted for grave robbing. Instead, he buried the biological waste directly beneath the floorboards. Sounds like Gacy. But Franklin's involvement, historically, experts agree that Franklin, ever the champion of scientific innovation, was almost certainly aware of the illicit medical school operating in his lodgings. However, there is zero evidence he participated in the dissections or procurement of the bodies. He was simply open-minded landlord tolerating some highly illegal cutting-edge science downstairs. So each of these cases highlights how easily the public can spin a narrative, one born from a podcast meme, or one shared last name, and one a 200-year-old medical secret. A lot of stuff to chew, a lot of stuff to look into. Hopefully I piqued your guys' interest in some of these conspiracy theories. You guys will go down the rabbit hole and check them all out. Again, I appreciate you guys watching. Again, if you had any questions, make sure you sent them to Gwen in all caps. But from here, let's bring Gwen back on and let's see if we could answer some of these questions.
Hey, we've got one at least. Let me turn this off. So sorry, guys. It's a little warm here. Can you see it, or do you need me to?
You're going to have to read it because I can't see for doo-doo. So.
Right. I'm probably going to butcher this name. It's Leea. So I'm going to say Leah. If it's wrong, please correct
my friend Leah, she's great. She's been in a lot of our Kinetic Paracon stuff like that. She's a great psychic. Yeah, she's a great psychic comedian, very lovely person.
Right. She says, what is your take on stalkers, potentially on psycho, systemic path to serial killer, ? Suffering from lack of attention, affection, observance as a child? Awesome question, by the way.
Well, a lot of times stalker per se, there's a level of how people go from that childhood abuse and trauma and how it gains traction. You know, as a younger kid, of course, the harming of animals, seeing what happens and actually getting to the point where they're giving themselves that energy or that fantasy. And sometimes that fantasy is to hide from the trauma. That's how they cure their trauma with that fantasy world. And it gains traction where a lot of these kids start becoming peeping Toms at first before they go full on, where they might go in and hurt somebody. But in this case, they might become, the stalkers at first. And then finally the fantasy gets to a point where they start going higher and higher and start gaining this MO of what they're about to do. From a peeping into windows to actually going in and killing people or taking them hostage. It's how the echelon goes, how their fantasy goes more and more. Because a lot of people with fantasies, they get to a point where they get to that point of the fantasy and it's just not doing it for them anymore. So they level up to the next level. And that's how it projects from that childhood trauma, how they mask from what happened to them and they put it into that fantasy world, that catalyst that gets them to that point. Hopefully that answers it for you, Lee, but I know I'll see you at a couple places and we could talk more about it.
Right. That's the only question I see right now. Guys, if you have one, type it. Doesn't have to be in caps right now, but let's talk about who has viewed that I can see. I know I saw Stacia pop up. Raven.
Lovely Raven.
Raven. Carol.
Yeah, Carol's been watching every episode. I love that. I know,
we love it, Carol. Barbara, I think Barbara was here last week.
Yeah.
Or maybe the week also. I lose track.
People keep tuning in because I guess, we're giving good information. again, some of the episodes, hopefully it saves somebody's life. Hopefully it gives you information to help with our, the old thing of takes a village to raise our kids. These are just cool conspiracy theories and all that, but these are things to look into a little bit further and educate yourself, and just kind of what we talked about, disseminate between conspiracy and actual fact in what we get. So when you learn how a serial killer's mind works, you could say, hey, that's a conspiracy. I know, because this is not what we learned scientifically and how we pick apart a serial killer. So,
right. We also have Kenneth Drake.
Oh, love me, Kenneth Drake. He's coming to visit us this weekend for the big psychic fair. We got a big world-class psychic fair going on at Billy's Acapella Martini Bar on May 31st from 11 to 4. Make sure you join us. Kenneth Drake will be there reading for you. Stacia. Nice. We got a whole big thing online, so check it out. There he is, the man himself, Adam Began. I love Adam. Historically haunted tours. Make sure you take a tour with him up in Maine. So.
And I did say it right. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Hey, Carol. Hey, everybody. And Leah said, thank you, Thomas and Gwen. The information was phenomenal. See you soon.
Good.
Yes, excellent. I always enjoy this. I'm not just here in the background or whatever. I actually, and I told my little story last week very briefly.
Yeah.
Did help. So we know I know a couple people that have messaged through, we used to do the other show, let's say, and it wasn't in as depth, but I know some people that it helped. So makes you feel good. I know it does, Thomas. It has to.
It does. That's the whole purpose. Again, we never glorify the serial killers. The thing is I give this information, and I've always done this, even in my old career. The whole thing is to get to the bottom of things and to try and prevent. It's nearly impossible. It's just like the paranormal. We'll never probably be able to prove by a shadow of a doubt that paranormal exists, because once we're able to, that's not paranormal anymore. It just becomes normal. It's the same thing with the mind of a killer or how they're raised. Nobody really knows what the catalyst is. It's hard. You don't know what the fingerprint of what drove them to do it until they're actually captured. We go by patterns. We might figure out if we have 20 people, we might be able to pinpoint in on a couple of them according to what we profile. But really, it's very difficult. Hopefully, it's getting easier nowadays with a lot more advancement in digital stuff, cameras everywhere, DNA is better, those types of things. More people with cameras on their phone, having so many different angles, things to pick up, something that happened somewhere, somebody on their phone might have been filming at the time. So we always like to keep that. So there's a lot more with the digital age that's been very helpful, but still the mind, the mind can do some crazy stuff, and it's hard really to pinpoint. You have free will, and sometimes when you don't give everybody what's going on, you're able to hide, and that's what a lot of these people do.
Well, I got to say, it is very interesting. It's also sick in a way. I know we all kind of enjoy especially, I think, Jack the Ripper, because it's still a question. That one usually is one of the favorites. It's just a question. We don't know. It was back then. Well, we may never know for sure. So, and
it's funny because a lot of people talk about that time, Jack the Ripper, but let me bring up something. Do you realize that less than a mile away along the river, there was bodies coming up in the river, only torsos? There was a torso killer at the same time Jack the Ripper was operating. Two different serial killer type things going on. Were they connected? I don't know. Did they share something? Was there a network going on there back then too? There was a lot of, poor areas, and there was a lot of the wealthier people didn't like it. So were they trying to get rid of a lot of these people? Was there people hired to do these things and make it look like a monster, especially around that time? We don't know. There's conspiracy right there. Maybe I'm inventing a new conspiracy with the attachment of Jack the Ripper and the torso killer right there along the Thames there. So it's, crazy.
Think about the ones we don't know of, because, they used to, and I don't say this wrong, but they used to say that it was some kind of saying about all the bodies in that river, something about, because, you didn't even want to step foot in it because you'd get like sick, especially back in the day. Yeah, I mean, think about how many bodies they never found there, and who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? So yeah, it's very
There's
interesting.
there's so much stuff. There's people that, I don't know, maybe government makes them disappear, or, you know, those theories, and somebody knew too much, they get disappeared and all that, and then they blame it on some serial killer. Like we talked about, you know, all these kids going missing and there's a smiley face everywhere and those types of things. You know, there's always a catalyst thrown into it. It's always those red flags. What are they showing us, and what's actually going on is what we want to look at.
Right. I'm gonna say this wrong. Asiana Trudale. I probably butchered that too. I apologize. It's more of interest to.
Well, we have to butcher everything tonight because we're talking about serial killers.
There you go. But
that's our excuse.
It's okay. Yeah, it's more of an interest to how their brains worked and how they can do these crimes or those crimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Very true.
It is. Well, that's why we talk about it. We, you know, if you had missed a few of the episodes, again, go back and watch them. I do appreciate All Access Network Television this past Saturday doing a marathon of all the episodes. So this is the newest one that wasn't part of the marathon. Yeah. So, of course, go back and watch a few of them, especially talking about the mind and what happens to the mind, how it works, whether we're born with it, whether how it's learned, what trauma could do to rewire the brain. And so those are a lot of the past episodes that we did. Catch up with those, and that way it helps. So a lot of these episodes later, I start talking about particular serial killers. You'll understand more why they developed the way they did, how their mind actually works, because we know more now. Of course, we didn't know enough then to capture them when we should have, but then they were finally captured. Most of them are captured by mistake, not by great police work, unfortunately. So,
yeah, but we're trying to change that nowadays. But
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, you can go back on All Access, especially the YouTube, because if you don't know, Facebook keeps it for 30 days. YouTube keeps it for, I don't even know how long.
Forever until you get rid of your channel.
Pretty much, unless there's a glitch. So if you go back on All Access, you can go back on my Facebook at least. I know it is all there from Saturday. If you want to go back and watch, they're in order. And then this is the only one that's not in that order. Yeah, go back and watch them. They're very interesting. We love doing that. And what day is this weekend? Which day or Saturday is your event? Sunday is that's the closest event that we got going on.
Now, the event is sponsored by the Global Network Events duo, the Shaman and the Showman. Of course, I'm the shaman. Charles Rosenet is the showman. Of course, he's not going to be able to make it out to the Mentor, Ohio area, but I will be there running it with my counterpart, Stacia Wills, who will be reading for you. Again, come see her, book a reading with her, because I tell you, people fly from other countries to sit with her for a reading. She gets calls from all over the world for phone readings, anything you could think of. If you want to book something with her, just instant message me. I'll get you all hooked up and all that, and see if she has some space opened up. Whether if you miss her on Sunday, we're more than happy to get in touch with her during the week and hook up a phone reading with her or an in-person. She has an office out in the area where we're going to be doing this event, but also going to be there. The Hollywood psychic himself, Kenneth Drake, will be there. That's another one. Give me a call or give his agent DePizzle a call. Hook up and get a reading from him. But if you want to see him in person, again, Sunday, It's May. I don't know what month it is anymore. May 31st. Check that out. There's Danny. So again, I gotta get Danny on because of his attachment to, actually meeting a serial killer at a young age. But we'll talk about that later on down the road. But come out to that. There's a lot of other great psychics and meetings. There's going to be vendors. You could get awesome martinis there. It's a very high class martini bar. So the food is fantastic. All the people there that run it are unbelievable, and we can't wait for that. You could get your message and a martini all in the same.
Oh, see,
Yeah, messages and
missing it.
martinis. Just ripping off the head here, just renaming the whole thing. But this is a great event that they do. I think they do one or two of them a year. So this one always gets really busy. So make sure you get there on time, sign up who you want to sit with and all that. But all of them are great. They have all gone through, we've all talked to all these people just to make sure that they're the best of the best. And we want to give that to you. So it's a great event.
Mentor Ohio, she says.
Yes.
Barbara says. Yes, she says she's not far from there. Awesome.
Yeah, make sure you're there, Barbara. You could sit with my counterpart, Stacia, or Kenneth Drake. There's a lot of people there. Jeannie. There's so many different psychic mediums. Go on my page. I have a nice advertisement about it, a little reel going on all the people that are going to be there. Go to the online website of the restaurant. It's Billy's Acapelli Martini Bar and Restaurant. Check out everything on there. So we'll see you guys all on Sunday. If you're in the area, make sure you come. And again, if you can't make it, again, a lot of these psychic mediums do phone readings and all that, like Stacia does, Kenneth Drake, Jeannie does more of her card reading and all that other stuff. But there's so many different things going on. I wish I could remember everybody's name, but there's going to be some great people there.
And Tom, tag me in it, and so everybody can see it, just in case they go across my page too for something else. That'd be great.
Yeah, and again, we got tons of other stuff right after that. June 6th at the Haunted Hillview Manor is another psychic fair. That we'll all be at. Actually, Raven Wolf will be there. So one of our people on All Access Network Television, she'll be there reading for you. Of course, Stacia will be there. There's going to be a lot of different people there. We're excited for that one. Also, because Haunted Hillview Manor is such an awesome place. If you do come, make sure you donate to Save the Roof. If you can't make it, just send in your donations at www.hauntedhillviewmanor.com. We'd love the help. We'd love to see you. You have to go online and sign up for your spot. I know it's June 6th. I think Stacia only has a couple spots left already. Some of them are still open. Make sure you reach out, get a spot with Raven. Raven's straight out of Salem. So she's one of the best readers and best people in the country. Again, so it's a top of the line psychic event there also. So that's coming up. And of course, July 11th, Connecticut Paracon. August 8th and 9th is the Connecticut Witch and Culture Festival. And I know far off, we got the Salem Paracon November 14th. So that's going to be a big one. Littered in, again, is a lot of other things. We got HillCon, of course, back at Haunted Hillview Manor. We're going to be accompanying John Zaffis on June 27th, along with Mary Jo Chudley from Penn Paranormal. We'll be accompanying John Zaffis's appearance at Haunted Hillview Manor. So it's a day with John Zaffis and an investigation classes. Learn from the Godfather himself. It's one of those paranormal events you can't refuse. So make sure you're there. And it's going to be an exciting one. So just all kinds of things. HillCon, like I said, Cleveland Paracon, New Orleans Paracon, the Hollow Paracon and Film Festival, the Underworld Culture Con. There's so many that we're going to be part of. There's tons of them. There's our paranormal event that we're sponsoring out in New Hampshire. There's so many of them this year. We're going to be so many places. I forget. Good
Go
things.
To Thomas's page.
Yeah, good things.
Share it with me. I don't know them all either.
Yeah, there's like a bazillion podcasts I'm on. It's like I wake up in the morning. I was like, okay, what am I doing today? It's just I freeze sometimes. But I do this all for everybody. To help out, to get the word out. Of course, with Wardruna, our healing collective, we're going to be all over the place talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you come and hear our talks and all that. It'll blow your mind. It's a great thing. It's going to put the paranormal on its head. And the great thing about it is it's a healing thing. It's not just paranormal. It's just everything in a whole, because not everybody needs to have some healing. And it isn't just paranormal. We just happen to be in the paranormal because believe it or not, most people that have the most trauma are chasing their own demons, and they end up in the paranormal. So what better place to be, I guess. So we deal with it all the time. But
Hey, do you know what your subject is going to be next week, or is that to come?
I don't know yet. It's one I'm going to have to put my brain to. Unfortunately, this week has been crazy, and my mind hasn't been quieted all week, and it's a lot of stuff going on. But after we get off and I've gotten this one out of the way, I'm actually going to put my last 2 brain cells to work and see what we could come up with for next week.
Well, watch out for it. As soon as he sends it to me, we'll put it out, and he'll put it out too, and he'll tag me in it, and we'll get it out there. And we got another show in just a few minutes, so we're going to have to get off here in just a minute. But Thomas, great episode as always. Okay.
Thank you, my dear. And since we're at the end of the episode, you know, of course, what I say before we get off anything or anytime I do a reel.
Yes.
Everybody, let's go down the rabbit hole again.